Welcome to the 17th episode of the Building Interactive Website series, which will go over the basics of arrays in JavaScript. So in simple terms, an array is an object that resembles a list, as in can hold multiple values at the same time. This fixes a problem that we currently have, which is that we can only store one value in a single variable. And for convenience and easier development, it would be nice if we could store multiple values in the same variable and access each of them. So the way that we actually create an array is by using the const keyword to start off with. This is because we want to prevent the array from being reassigned accidentally to a different value and prevent any unwanted modifications to it. And then after the const keyword, we can give a name for the array. I'm planning on putting strings describing food items in my first array, so I'm just going to call it my food, and then an equal sign, just like a normal variable, except this time, instead of quotes or just a number, we're going to use square brackets like this. And this is known as an array literal. And this is what we put the array items inside. So in this case, we can put strings, since this is an array of food items. And we can separate the food items, or strings in this case, by making use of commas. So in this case, I'm going to have 3 food items. The first one is a pizza. The second is a burger. And third is a sandwich. And if we were to print this array out to the console, you can see these 3 array items get printed out. Additionally, arrays can hold values of any data type. So if we were to say my numbers instead of my food, then we can put in 1, 3, and 1.618, for example. And we can put an additional number here too, just to show that this doesn't just work with 3 values, it can be more or less too. And now you can see these 4 values get printed out. Additionally, all these values don't have to all be the same data type. You can have items with different data types as well. So if we were to say my items, then we could say 1, and then hello, and then a Boolean value like true, and even another array with 2 and 3 inside. Then you can see we have 1, hello, true, and then the 4th value here is another array with the values 2 and 3. So you can also nest arrays. However, most of the time, array items will all be the same data type so that they can all be processed easily in the same way when iterating through them. In order to access an array item at a specific index, it's very similar to accessing a specific character in a string. You just type the array name and then square brackets in front of it, and then inside those square brackets the index number. So in this case, if we wanted to access the first item in the array, then we would do my items and then square brackets and then 0 inside, because indexes start at 0 just like strings and their characters. So if we run the code, you can see 1 gets printed out because the first value in the my items array is 1. Additionally, you can get the length of an array by using my items, or the name of your array, and then using dot length. This will return a number which refers to the count of all the items inside the array. Since this array has 4 total items, in this case, 4 will be printed out, as you can see here. This length property is useful if you want to get items from the end of the array, since you can put my items.length in square brackets, put my items or the names of your array in these places, and then do -1, because since my items.length is 4 in this case, we have to subtract 1 from it to get 3, which will get the 4th item because of the way indexes work. So if we run it, you can see an array with 2 and 3 is printed out. Next, we'll go over the different ways of iterating through or looping through each of the different items of an array. The first way of iterating through an array is by using a classic for loop. So the way you do this in the sandbox that I have open right here is by selecting the first option, for loop, in the autocomplete menu, and either clicking on it or pressing enter, and then you'll see a template for a for loop pop up. And so instead of index, you can just type in the letter I, because it's shorter, simpler, and more concise. And then you can press the tab key and then replace bound with my items.length. And so what this does is, firstly, it makes I start at 0, which is the loop variable, and then it checks if I is less than the length of the array, and then if so, it does what's inside here in this pair of curly braces, and then after that it increments I. So then I goes to 1, and then 1 is less than 4 in this case, and then it does the stuff here, and then it increments. I is 2, 2 is less than 4, does everything here, goes to 3, 3 is less than 4, does whatever's in here, increments, and then it goes to 4, but 4 is not less than 4, so it just stops and the loop ends. And so the way you can access an item is by using const keyword to declare variable, and then you can call the variable item or a name that's more descriptive. I'm just calling it item because the array is called my items. And then the way you actually access the current item is through the name of the array, square brackets like before, and then the loop variable I inside. And then in this case, I'll just print out all the items to the console. And now you can see all the 4 items in the array are printed out. So additionally, you can also print out the value of I every single time. And you can see there's 0, 1, 2, and 3 here, which are the indexes of all the different items in the array. So the upside of using this normal for loop is that you can access both the current item and the current index of that item. But the downside is it's pretty long and pretty difficult to understand at first glance. However, there is another way of iterating through items which doesn't involve an index variable. This next way of iterating through an array that we're going to go over is a for of loop. The way you can create this is by typing in for again, but this time selecting the for of loop option down here. And so now you can see it creates a template for a for of loop. And firstly, for this example, we can change let to const so that this item isn't accidentally changed. If you wanted to change it, you can use let, but we're just going to print it out for this example, so we can change it to const. And then the name here is the name of the item, so we can just say item. And the collection in this case is my items. And what this does is it just goes through each one of the items in the array. And then we can print out that item with console.log. And as you can see, it has the exact same result as printing it out with the normal for loop, except this time we just have a single item variable and no loop variable for the index. The advantage of using a for of loop is that it's much simpler and easier to interpret. However, the downside is you don't have access to the index of that specific item. So, depending on your situation, you might actually have to use a normal for loop. But if you just want access to the item, this is usually more than enough. This concludes episode 17 of the Building Interactive website series. Thank you very much for watching. If you're enjoying these videos, make sure to like and subscribe, and please make sure to look out for episode 18.